The ship's hull groaned under the strain of the FTL drive, its engines humming a warning that only Captain Mira Sato could hear. Outside, the void stretched endlessly, a jagged scar of darkness punctuated by the faintest flickers of distant stars. Her hands clenched around the command chair's armrests, her eyes scanning the swirling lights on the holographic display. The Nebula's fury was hurtling toward the Zharan Nebula, an ancient, dead system that the Galactic Council had long abandoned. The team, her crew, was silent. Only the sounds of tapping fingers and distant murmurs filled the bridge. Mira could feel their unease like a weight on her chest, even if they didn't dare voice it. The reality of their situation was inescapable. The Council had made a grave mistake, underestimating the Zharan's power. But Mira couldn't afford to hesitate. She had a mission. And failure was not an option. Her comm officer, Dorian, broke the silence. "Captain, we're approaching the nebula. Coordinates locked. We're within range of the Zharan ship." Mira's heart skipped. The Zharan weren't just an ancient alien species. They were a warning. The last time they'd shown up, it was in the form of a failed Council mission. The galaxy's most powerful military leaders had been slaughtered in minutes. No one knew exactly why the Zharan had returned, but their presence on the edge of the nebula was no coincidence. "We need to move fast," Mira ordered, her voice cutting through the tension in the air. She turned toward her tactical officer Aiden. "What's their status?" "Unknown," Aiden replied, his fingers moving over the controls with practiced precision. "Their ships are cloaked. The scanners are having trouble breaking through the interference. We'll have to get closer to pinpoint their exact position." "How close?" Mira asked, her voice tight. Every fiber of her being screamed to turn back. But she had no choice. Not this time. "Too close for comfort," Aiden said quietly. Mira didn't have time to process his words. The lights on the bridge flickered and dimmed for an instant. And then, static. It wasn't the first time. The Zharan were masters of the unseen. Technology far beyond anything the Council could imagine. And their signal was unmistakable, a dark, chilling force that twisted the very fabric of space around them. A distant hum echoed throughout the ship. Mira's breath caught in her throat. The first blast hit the hull, violent and jagged, shattering a piece of the rear stabilizer. The ship veered off course, slamming against a nearby asteroid. "Captain, we've been hit! Shields are down to 30%! Aiden's voice was frantic, his hands slamming against the console. "Get us out of here!" Mira barked. But it was too late. The ship had already started its slow spin, its course set for destruction. "I can't! The controls are offline!" Aiden's panic mirrored the tension building in Mira's chest. "We're drifting toward their vessel. They've got us in a tractor beam." Mira's gaze snapped to the comm screen, where a shadowy, angular figure appeared. The Zharan leader, a towering, insected creature with segmented limbs and glowing blue eyes, loomed in front of her, his voice crackling across the transmission. "Human," the Zharan spoke, his tone calm but dripping with malice. "You have come to us in a time of great need. You should have never answered the call." Mira's pulse quickened. The creature's arrogance was clear. "We came to negotiate," she said, swallowing her rising fear. "We're here to stop the conflict, not escalate it." The Zharan's mandibles clicked, a sound that reverberated through the calm. "You misunderstand. You are nothing but pawns. Your kind thinks it can negotiate with us. But the price of this misunderstanding will be your annihilation." Mira's mind raced. She'd seen threats before, from raiders to governments, but nothing compared to this. The Zharan were no mere adversary, they were an extinction-level threat. "We don't have time for this," Mira muttered, her voice steely, as she turned to Dorian. "Prepare the quantum torpedoes. Aiden, get the helm back online, now." But the Zharan's next words froze her. "We will not allow you to leave," the leader said, his voice a guttural rumble. "Not alive, anyway." The comm went dead. The lights on the bridge flickered again, and the ship's internal systems began to glitch, random sparks from the panels, the stench of ozone in the air. Mira's eyes flashed with determination. If the Zharan thought she was just another victim to be discarded, they were gravely mistaken. Dorian, activate the emergency thrusters, she ordered. Aiden, get me a trajectory. I want to break free of their hold. Her crew scrambled, fear in their eyes, but they knew her. They trusted her to lead them out of this alive. Thrusters activated, Captain, Dorian confirmed. But I'm not sure it'll be enough to break free. The tractor beam is too strong. Mira's hands gripped the command chair once more. The walls of the bridge seemed to close in around her as the realization hit. This was no longer a negotiation. This was survival. And the Zharan were intent on wiping them from the stars. Her mind flashed to the words of her mentor, General Suries, a battle-hardened veteran of humanity's early space wars. In war, there are no alliances. There are only opportunities for survival. She leaned forward, her gaze sharp, never leaving the screen. She wouldn't give up, not while there was still a chance. We're getting out of this, she said, her voice steady. All hands brace for impact. Prepare for a fight. The nebula's fury rumbled, as if in response, and Mira's heart beat in time with the pulse of the failing ship. The Zharan may have underestimated humanity, but she would show them just how wrong they were. The spark of rebellion, of defiance, was lit. And it was burning bright. The ship shuddered again. Another blast rattled the nebula's fury, sending a shockwave through the walls of the bridge. Mira gritted her teeth, her hands a vice on the command chair. Dorian's voice came through, almost drowned by the hum of alarms. Captain, we're losing structural integrity on Deck 3. The hull's compromised. We've got air leaks, and the auxiliary systems are failing. I don't know how much longer we can hold together. Mira looked at the starfield outside the viewport, her mind racing. The Zharan ship loomed just beyond the nebula, its sleek black shape like a predator circling its prey. They were caught in its orbit, the tractor beam still holding them firmly in place. If they didn't break free soon, they would be sitting ducks for whatever came next. Aiden's voice cut through the tension. We've managed to reroute auxiliary power to the forward shields. It'll buy us a few minutes, but not much more. They're hammering us from every angle. Mira's mind flashed to the mission briefing. The Zharan had never been this aggressive. Not in all their recorded encounters. There was something different this time. The stakes weren't just a skirmish, they were fighting for survival. But they had no backup, no reinforcements. It was just them, drifting in a dying ship, facing an enemy that had once wiped entire fleets from existence. Get us out of here, Aiden. Now! Mira barked, voice tight with urgency. Aiden's fingers flew over the console. His face was tense, sweat beading on his forehead, but he didn't look up. He didn't need to. He knew the drill. They either broke free, or they died. Simple as that. Thrusters at maximum, but they're not strong enough. The Zharan's hold is too powerful, Aiden said, his voice strained. We're not breaking free without a fight. A soft, tense silence fell over the bridge. Mira could feel her heartbeat in her throat. This wasn't just a fight for control of the ship, it was a fight for their lives. And if they didn't escape, humanity's first line of defense would be gone, just like that. Then we fight, she said, a fierce calm settling over her. Dorian didn't hesitate. Captain, I'm pulling up the weapon systems, but they're damaged. The quantum torpedoes are offline, and the energy coils are failing. We're down to lasers. Lasers? Mira asked, her voice cold with disbelief. Against that? She motioned toward the Zharan vessel, its dark silhouette hovering ominously in the distance. It was a weapon, an unstoppable force in itself. We don't have a choice, Dorian replied. We're not in a position to get creative. She understood that. The gravity of their situation settled on her like a lead weight. The Zharan didn't need to make a move. They had them. The ship, the crew, it was all at their mercy. But Mira couldn't let that happen. Not on her watch. Her eyes darted to the tactical screen. The Zharan ship was moving closer, its lights flashing in eerie blue. A wave of cold ran through her as the realization hit. They weren't going to just destroy them, they were going to break them. To grind them down until there was nothing left. And once the ship was lost, so would be the last hope for humanity's survival. We need a plan. A real plan, Mira muttered under her breath. Aiden glanced up, catching her eye. We could try something risky. If we overload the main reactor. No, Mira interrupted. That's a last resort. But before they could discuss further, a new voice crackled over the comms, cutting through the tension. I did warn you, human. The Zharan leader's voice echoed, smooth and calm, with an almost mocking quality. You may think you're clever, but you are merely ants beneath the boot of something far greater. You've interfered in matters beyond your understanding. And now you'll pay. Mira's pulse spiked. She clenched her jaw. We've heard enough of your threats, she growled, stepping to the comm panel. We came here to stop a war. We came to save you, but if you want a fight, you've got one. The Zharan's cold laughter rippled through the comm. Fools! You would dare fight us? You are a dying species, clinging to your pathetic existence. You are insects, and your time has come. Before Mira could respond, the communication cut off. But it didn't matter. The challenge had been made. They weren't here to surrender. They were here to fight. If they had to die, they'd die fighting. The ship lurched again, and Mira was thrown forward. The bridge alarms blared, and the walls shook. Something had broken inside the engine room. Report! She shouted, bracing herself against the console. Deck 4, full systems failure! Dorian's voice was filled with panic. Hull integrity at 30%. We're losing power! Mira gripped the edges of the console, staring at the screen in disbelief. Aiden, we're going to crash! No! Aiden shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. We can still make it, just give me a moment. I'll reroute everything. But time was running out. With the Zharan ship hovering just outside, Mira could feel the cold grip of inevitability tightening around them. If they didn't act now, if they didn't find a way to break free, the nebula's fury would be nothing more than debris in a vast, indifferent galaxy. The countdown had already begun. The reactor was minutes from critical overload. And then, an idea flickered in Mira's mind, something reckless, something she should never even consider. But at this point, she had nothing to lose. Aiden, she said, her voice cold, resolute. Override the reactor's safety protocols. I'll give you a minute. 1 minute to get us out of here. If you don't, we die. Aiden hesitated, looking at her, a mixture of fear and defiance in his eyes. He knew the risks. The reactor would be unstable. But there was no choice. Understood, he said, his voice hardening with resolve. As the countdown began, Mira's heart beat like a war drum. They were playing with fire, but sometimes, fire was the only way out. And if they were going to die, they'd die on their feet, not kneeling before the Zharan. Do it, Aiden. Now. The cold metal of the command chair was biting, but Mira barely noticed it as the ship trembled again. Each shudder sent a ripple of panic through her crew. The emergency lights flickered in rhythm with the alarm, casting an eerie red hue over the bridge. 1 minute, Captain! Aiden's voice broke through the chaos, his tone tight. He was hunched over the control panel, his hands flying over the damaged console, every second slipping further away. I can't hold it together much longer. The core is unstable. If this doesn't work... I know, Mira said, cutting him off. Her eyes were fixed on the tactical screen, watching the Zharan ship grow larger, its menacing outline silhouetted against the swirling nebula. The tractor beam was still pulling them in. No matter how much they tried to fight, they were still trapped. The Zharan were playing with them, toying with their fate. Aiden's face was a mask of strain, his forehead slick with sweat. We've got no backup. No reinforcements. If this fails, we're finished. Then we make sure it doesn't fail, Mira replied. Her voice was sharp, steady, as she locked eyes with him. You've got one shot, Aiden. Make it count. The tension in the air was palpable. Mira could feel it in every fiber of her being, the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. She was supposed to lead them out of this, but she had no plan. Just one wild, reckless idea, and no guarantee it would work. But they didn't have time for a plan. "Dorian!" she called, turning to the comms officer, whose hands were frozen in place. "Is the message going out?" He nodded, his face pale but determined. "Sending it now, Captain. The distress signal is live. The Council should be receiving it. It's just a matter of time before they pick it up." "Good." Mira's hand clenched into a fist. The Council's response was their only hope. If they couldn't break free of the Zharan hold, if they couldn't escape, the Council was their last shot. It was slim. But it was something. Aiden's voice came again, strained. "Captain, the core is unstable. The ship's going to blow unless I can override the fusion limiter. I can try to manually reroute it, but there's no telling how much longer I'll have before the reactor goes critical." Mira's stomach twisted. The risk of setting off a reactor breach was high, too high. But in her gut she knew there were no other options. No other play. "Do it!" "No!" she ordered. As the ship groaned under the pressure of the Zharan tractor beam, Mira's gaze locked on the viewscreen. The Zharan ship was too close. Far too close. "We're running out of time." Aiden's voice was rising. "It's now or never." Mira felt her breath catch in her throat. Her crew was running on fumes, trying to outlast a nightmare they couldn't even begin to understand. She had to believe in them. In the fight left inside of them. The reactor's hum began to change, a low, ominous vibration building through the entire ship. Mira's hands gripped the armrests harder, and for the briefest moment she felt her own fear try to push through. But she shoved it down. Fear wasn't an option, not anymore. "Shields at 15%. Dorian's voice cut through the thick silence that had settled over the bridge. Aiden let out a strained exhale, his eyes fixed on the readouts. "I'm overriding the safety limits. I've got to dump the excess energy into the aft engines, and that'll cause a detonation in the rear compartment, but it's the only way to break free from the Zharan's grip." Mira felt a chill sweep through her. A detonation meant a sacrifice, a heavy one. It would blow apart the rear of the ship, tear through critical systems, and leave them stranded in space. But if they didn't do it, they were going to be nothing more than a burned-out wreck. The Zharan wouldn't show mercy. Not this time. "Do it! Give us that shot," Mira said, her voice a cold command. Aiden worked the console with shaky hands, sweat dripping into his eyes. "The core's going critical. Just a few more seconds." Suddenly, the whole ship shook, more violently than before. Mira's heart skipped a beat as the lights flickered again. She felt the pull of gravity shift, the sensation of weightlessness as the ship began to tilt. "We've lost aft control," Dorian shouted. "They're increasing the power to the tractor beam. We're being sucked in." "Hold on," Aiden shouted, his voice cracking under the pressure. His hands slapped against the console, a few more buttons pressed with desperation. "Almost there." Then the entire ship bucked violently. Mira's head slammed against the console, and for a moment, everything went black. When she came to, the ship was groaning, but the shaking had stopped. The alarms had gone silent. She blinked, disoriented, and slowly pushed herself up. The lights were dimming, flickering. Smoke filled the air, and the acrid scent of burning circuits reached her nostrils. "Aiden?" she rasped, her throat raw. I did it," he said, his voice tight with exhaustion. "We're free. The blast knocked us out of their tractor beam." The ship was drifting now, like a leaf caught in the wind. Mira stumbled to her feet, her head swimming as she assessed the damage. The Zharan ship was still there, looming in the distance, its lights a cold, cruel reminder that they had survived only by the skin of their teeth. But they had survived. "For now," Mira muttered under her breath, her hands gripping the console as she steadied herself. "But we won't last much longer. We've bought ourselves some time, but only just." Dorian's voice came next, strained but focused. "We've got one shot, Captain. The distress signal is still live, but we're too far out of range for any ships to intercept us in time. If we don't get this ship patched up soon, we'll be sitting ducks. We need a plan. Mira stood tall, looking out at the dark void beyond. The Zharan had given them a taste of their power. But they hadn't broken them. Not yet. Then we get back to work, she said, her voice low but firm. We survive. We fight. And we make sure they know this. Humanity is not going down without a fight. In that moment, Mira understood one thing: they weren't just battling to survive. They were battling to prove they belong. To the galaxy. To the future. To themselves. The Nebula's fury drifted, its engines barely functional, shields down to a fraction of their original strength. The ship was a ghost, silent, broken, but still somehow alive. Mira stood at the bridge, her hands clenched into fists as she stared at the view screen. The Zharan ship remained in the distance, its dark silhouette impossible to ignore. The odds were insurmountable. But somehow, they were still standing. We don't have much time, Captain, Aiden said from behind her. His voice was hoarse, worn from exhaustion. Their ship is recharging its weapons. If we don't move, we'll be vaporized before we can even get a shot off. Mira's jaw tightened. She could feel the weight of every decision pressing on her. A misstep now would mean the end of everything. Her eyes flicked to the tactical screen, and the ghost of a plan formed in her mind. It was risky, insane even, but it was the only option they had left. Aiden, power up the forward thrusters, she ordered, her voice sharp with urgency. Give me enough to make a jump. Jump? Aiden's eyes widened. We're barely holding together, Mira. The FTL drive. I know. But it's our only chance, Mira said, her tone leaving no room for doubt. Get us into the nebula's core. If we can make it there, their tracking systems won't be able to follow us. We'll lose their lock. Dorian stepped forward, his face grim. Captain, if we jump too soon, the ship will tear apart. The strain on the hull will kill us. The repairs aren't done. We'll be dead in seconds. Mira turned to face him, her expression unwavering. We don't have seconds. We have minutes. Get us ready. I'll take full responsibility. The crew exchanged tense looks, but they all understood. There was no other option. If they stayed, the Zharan would finish them off. If they ran, they might just make it. And the faintest chance of survival was worth everything. Prepare for jump, Aiden muttered, his hands flying over the console. This is going to be a hell of a ride. Mira turned back to the viewport. The Zharan ship was charging up, its weapon systems glowing menacingly. The dark void of space around them felt suffocating, like an unspoken countdown to death. But she refused to give in to it. They would fight to the end. We're not going down without a fight, she whispered to herself. The entire ship vibrated as Aiden pushed the thrusters to maximum. The ship groaned in protest, its hull creaking under the strain. The emergency alarms blared, a deafening cacophony of warning bells. Engines at maximum, Aiden reported. We're going to make the jump, now. Engage FTL, Mira ordered. The ship lurched forward, the stars stretching into long streaks of light as the FTL drive kicked in. Mira's stomach dropped as the ship pushed through the fabric of space, the overwhelming pressure threatening to crush every bone in her body. The lights flickered, the console sparked, and Mira's vision blurred as they shot forward into the unknown. Seconds felt like hours as the ship sped through the nebula's dense clouds, the cosmic dust and ionized gases obscuring their trail. Mira's heart raced. The ship groaned in protest, but the FTL drive held steady for now. We did it, Aiden breathed, his voice filled with disbelief. We're free. For a brief moment, Mira allowed herself to exhale, the tension lifting from her shoulders. But she didn't let her guard down. Not yet. Check for any Zharan ships, Mira ordered, her eyes scanning the empty expanse of the nebula. Make sure we're clear. Dorian's hands flew over the comms panel, searching for signs of the Zharan vessel. I'm not detecting anything, he said, his voice strained. They've lost us. Mira nodded, though she didn't feel the victory she should have. They'd escaped the Zharan ship, temporarily. But the battle wasn't over. It had just shifted. Aiden's fingers hovered over the console, his face a mixture of exhaustion and relief. We've done it, Captain. The ship's still intact, barely. Mira turned to him, her eyes sharp. We've bought time, Aiden. But we're not safe yet. We need to get back to the Council's territory before they find us again. The Zharan won't stop. And next time, they'll come prepared. Dorian's voice cut through the tension. Captain, there's something else you should know. Mira turned to face him. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and concern. What is it? It's the distress signal, Dorian said, his voice low. The one we sent out. The Council's response, it's already here. Mira's heart skipped. She knew what that meant. The Council wasn't just responding, they were coming. And they were bringing everything they had. The stakes were about to get higher than ever. Patch it through, she ordered, her tone commanding. The screen flickered to life, and a new figure appeared, one Mira hadn't expected. It was an older man, his face marked by years of battles fought across the galaxy. His uniform was the familiar shade of blue and gold worn by the Council's top generals. But what struck her the most was the man's eyes. Cold. Calculating. And utterly devoid of mercy. Mira Sato, he said, his voice as sharp as a knife. I'm General Kalen. I've been given full authorization to handle this situation. You've done well to survive, but it's time for you to step aside. Mira's mind raced. General, we've barely survived an encounter with the Zharan. We need reinforcements, not orders. Kalen's lips curled into a thin, almost mocking smile. You misunderstand, Captain? We're not here to save you. We're here to deal with the Zharan, once and for all. And we'll do it in our way. You're expendable. Mira's stomach tightened. The words hit harder than any blast from the Zharan ship. But she couldn't let it show. Not now. We'll see about that, she said coldly, her voice full of resolve. If you want the Zharan, you'll have to go through me first. Kalen's eyes narrowed. Don't make the mistake of underestimating us, Captain. The transmission ended abruptly, and the screen went black. Mira stood still, her heart racing, but her mind sharp as ever. The stakes had just been raised. The Council wasn't coming to rescue them. They were coming to use them as pawns in a much larger game. But Mira wasn't done yet. She wouldn't be anyone's pawn. Not the Zharan's, and certainly not the Council's. Set a course for the nearest Council base, she ordered, her voice a quiet fury. We're going to make them regret thinking they could control us. As the ship turned toward the unknown, Mira couldn't shake the feeling that the real fight had just begun.